Welcome back to Proxamer, everybody. And today we're going to be talking about the Falcon. And, I want to go into what I thought about the Falcon before the changes to the Codex. I've basically always thought the Falcon was completely useless from about 4th edition all the way to, just the last edition. I thought the Falcon was awful and that it wasn't really a model worth taking. And, I've heard a lot of other players say, maybe taking one Falcon is okay or whatever. But honestly, I have to be honest with you guys. I've always had a bad opinion of it ever since, like I said, again, ever since 4th edition came out. And the Wave Serpent had its changes and so forth. So really what it is that the Falcon needed something to bring it in line with the other vehicles in the Eldar Codex. And because it's gotten that in the new Codex, I actually think that what it's got is exactly what it needed. And the real question is now, because Falcons are actually being taken so seriously, are Falcons overpowered now? And what single rule changed them to make them so viable in tournaments and competitive play? Well, let's go and take a look at that because it's really interesting. It's something I wouldn't have considered, but it actually is great. So before we get into that, though, let's look at why Falcons weren't really viable before, because I think, we have to go into this to understand why Falcons are so strong now. So they used to be a relatively high cost for what they were, and they kind of did a little bit of everything, but they weren't good at one thing. So, for example, they had a transport capacity, but they weren't the best transport. They had heavy weapons, but they weren't the best weapon platform, stuff like that. They had a pretty mediocre damage and transportability in general, and they were outshined by their fellow Eldar grav tanks. So they didn't have as much firepower as a Fire Prism. They weren't as good as a transport as a Wave Serpent. And on top of it all, they competed in a crowded heavy support detachment. So they weren't very viable for a number of reasons. But essentially, when you're competing with Fire Prisms, Night Spinners, stuff like that, and Dark Reapers in the past edition, not now, but in the past, you're just not going to see Falcons that much because they don't really offer much that other tanks and other roles can't offer themselves. And because they're not as survivable, they're not really a reliable transport. So a lot of people would pass on Falcons and remain on shelves everywhere. So here's what changed with the Falcon, and there's a couple of things that are minor tweaks that have improved the Falcon. For example, it's 140 points base now, and it comes with its weapons already. You don't have to upgrade. Comes with a vastly improved pulse laser, strength 9, AP -3, damage 3 plus D3. Very good weapon, and it has 2 shots, 48 range, and the scatter laser, which is also improved, by the way. And if scatter lasers aren't your thing, you can improve it by upgrading it to something else, shuriken cannon or whatever you want, basically. It has the same stats, survival-wise, and everything else as Fire Prisms and Night Spinners. We're talking, toughness 7, wounds 12, 3 plus save, ballistic skill 3, all that good stuff. It can transport 6 models of infantry like it always had, but here's the kicker now. It has the sudden assault ability and Cloudstrike. So just to remind everyone, Sudden Assault basically allows you to be deployed in reserves, and you can set it up on the board in any of your movement phases, even the first turn, as long as it's more than 9 inches away from enemy models. So this gives it a lot of, it gives it the ability to kind of come in whenever it wants and protect itself for the first turn of shooting. Just in case you don't get that first turn of shooting, it can still come in and do its thing. Very powerful rule, but when used with our next rule, which is Cloudstrike, it becomes absolutely overpowered. So if this transport model uses Sudden Assault, it can be set up on the battlefield like normal, first, second, or third movement phase, regardless of any mission rules. So that's important because some missions don't allow for reserves, so it can be set up anyway. And all the units embarked in the transport can disembark as long as they're 9 inches away from the enemy models, which basically means that those units inside are benefiting from sudden assault. And they can get out. Normally, you'd have to get out in the beginning of your movement. Before things move, you have to disembark. But this basically ignores that rule. It says, you know what, you can disembark after you use sudden assault with your Falcon. Incredibly powerful. This means units that normally wouldn't be able to do this, like Fire Dragons, Howling Banshees, now have a way of essentially deep striking. So in essence, this turns the Falcon into kind of like a drop pod. It can come in within the first 3 turns, wherever it wants on the board. Very useful. Can come in on objectives, do a lot of different stuff. So very powerful. And I can see why a lot of players are using it now, because essentially what this does is it gives you the versatility to be able to come in when you want, wherever you want on the board without fear of retaliation. So not only does this give sudden assault to some infantry units like Fire Dragons or Howling Banshees, even striking Scorpions if you don't want to use their advanced positions ability. This basically allows units to get in close, pinpoint the targets that they want to target, and not have to worry about enemy movement or anything like that, being able to prevent them from doing so. This is very good because a lot of experienced players, if they know you have Howling Banshees or Fire Dragons in something, they will definitely kill that Falcon as soon as possible. So if they have a couple tanks on the board and they're like, well, I really don't want to deal with Fire Dragons this game, better take out the Fire Dragons, they will kill your Falcons. I'll make it a point to kill those units. So this allows you to kind of say, well, you know what? I'm not going to allow you to do that. I'm going to do my thing first, like every good Eldar player, kind of plans to do. And I'm going to bring in my Fire Dragons anyway through this ability. And the other 2 things it does, it allows for basically units to come in on objectives whenever they want in the first 3 turns. Let's say that there's an objective that you need to capture. Well, you know what? I'm going to bring in a unit. I'm going to bring in my Falcon on that objective, and I'm going to bring in unit. It allows you to reinforce objectives and things like that. So very important. And it also ignores mission rules, which could prevent reserves. So you're going to be able to do this regardless of any mission rules that are currently in play. So, to wrap things up, Falcons are now extremely powerful, and they offer a wide array of benefits that normally other Eldar units wouldn't be able to get with any kind of ease. So, for example, you can use the Webway Strike stratagem, but that costs command points, and it doesn't protect the unit inside. You're not getting the benefit of that Falcon, and, in some missions, you might not be able to use that. And that usually won't be a problem. Usually reserves are allowed. But, even so, being able to, just eliminate that possibility is a fantastic special rule. So, yeah, Falcons have come back in a big way. You're going to start seeing them more and more in competitive play. And you might want to try them out yourself. If you're running a few squads of Fire Dragons and Wave Serpents, might want to try running them in a Falcon instead if you have the slots for it. And this could really put the enemy on their toes as far as deployment and things like that. So overall, I think the Falcon is going to be one of the premier choices for heavy support. I can see it being used in almost, every competitive list that has any Fire Dragons or any units like that want to deploy quickly. All right. Thank you for watching, everybody. I hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next video. We have a couple more videos coming up, and I'll see you guys next time.